Hendrik. Talk about energy. I can never keep up with where you are in the world, but the one thing I do know is you always make time for South African engagement. So thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you, Sangeeth. It's a privilege being here, and it's always good being in South Africa, and you allowed me this year to stay a bit longer than usual.
It does tie in with the warm weather normally.
Exactly.
Hendrik, let's get into it. We've got a lot to cover.
Can I just interrupt you here? I think we should give Adrian a hand for this leadership he's showing.
And he spoke about the team that helps him as well. So obviously there's a big team, not just at Discovery, but around the CEOs in South Africa that's making a big initiative. Actually, I think Hilton Kellner is joining us today from Discovery as well. And he's been a big part of Adrian's support in building it to where it needs to get to. He talks about the 130 CEOs initiative that business is doing in South Africa. Very optimistic about the potential outcomes and what South Africa needs to do. Do you share that optimism, or what is your view on what needs to happen to get South Africa moving in the right direction?
As one of the 130 signatories, I absolutely support the initiative. And nothing is achieved in the world by, pessimists very rarely get anything done. Okay, they sit on the sideline, they talk. People who change the world are inherently optimistic, and one has to tap into that energy as Adrian articulated. So that doesn't mean you're naive. It just means you say we can make a difference. And it's the yes we can attitude that has resulted. And recently I was in a feedback session where Adrian, Neil Froneman, and a few others, Martin Kingston, who lead this, gave us feedback. And Cas Kuvadia as well. And what was really interesting, they have secured a 6-weekly meeting with the president. They have asked the president to bring his key cabinet ministers there. So there's a 6-weekly honest dialogue. It's not that business tries to run the country, because business can't. But business can share its perspectives and provide technical support and help where necessary. And 8 months in, our government doesn't do a lot fast. So 8 months in, we were all a bit, not cynical, but had low expectations. But a few things have happened. There's been a significant set of operations in the security leg and the crime and corruption leg in terms of dealing with Zama excesses and effect of property rights. That was led by Neil Froneman, who you know is a very straight-talking guy, and he gave pretty good feedback. On the other hand, the energy story, we participated, we led. I don't know, when you come to Cape Town, you'll see our building is now a building site. When you're down there, don't look for us there. We're hidden somewhere around in the waterfront and all that, but we'll still give you a cup of coffee. But we, thanks to the work of the mayor of Cape Town, and by the way, I just have to interrupt myself. You got me in Joburg today, which is the short straw. Cape Town got the mayor of Cape Town. But I don't think it was appropriate to invite the mayor of Joburg to talk to you. Okay?
Well,
so that's why you got me.
I don't know if we know who the mayor actually is.
Well, it's not, anyway, whoever is the mayor right now. But the mayor of Cape Town negotiated a very interesting energy deal, which was approved by government, because government respects him, where you could do so-called wheeling, where you could generate power in one site, buy it in another site within the Cape Town area. Now we're going to have in Cape Town where any energy is generated can be sold into the grid immediately, not with the caps and the limitations we've had. And that is now going to be rolled out nationally. And that is work of the CEO initiative. And it's work, it's the positive engagement with government which led to that, rather than us moaning from the side and complaining and just whinging. And that's where Adrian's leadership is massive. But I'm very proud to say that the 91 building will be the first energy sufficient, so completely green building, reliant on energy generated on the rooftops of the same landlord in the same area. That's a model which can make Adrian's 8 billion, Kusile $3 billion that South African invested for the same amount of energy in a much shorter time, that can even dwarf it in due course. So we must be optimistic on the energy side.
I mean, Hendrik, so we speak to a lot of the guys in the room, and the criticism we always get from advisors, from clients, is business is just, you guys are just not doing enough. You've got to do more. I mean, Is there more that can be done by business, by people in this room?
I, interestingly engage in more than one country with government. I mean, in the UK, it's really interesting because government, there's not a big UK domestic business sector. So we happen to be, in money management, one of the biggest, what I would call local businesses there. So in South Africa, we've got the same experience. Government is similar around the world. You can engage it, but you can't replace it. And the moment business oversteps the line and stop focusing on the main thing, which in our case is delivering returns for you, delivering a service and investments, we will get defocused and we'll get smashed in the rough game of politics. So we also have to protect value, but we are citizens and we represent citizens. And in that position, given the number of savers we have, the people, your clients, ours together, we have a right to speak up. But we have to do it in a respectful and positive way, otherwise we will achieve no results. It's really simple. You've seen those people who arrive at a customs line and then starts behaving appallingly to the person, demotivated Home Affairs employee on the other side. All that happens is they either go to the back of the queue or they wait longer. Okay? So in reality, you've got to find a way. So I'm not part of the sort of, if I may call it, there's been a noisy fringe of particularly white South Africans who've constantly shouting and also not recognizing the good government does. We need to do both. I spent yesterday in Pretoria. We have some very good, well-meaning civil servants working under extreme conditions. If we keep on bashing them, they're just going to turn off and not help us. So but I think business in this country is actively involved, is positively involved, and is trying, but is not willing to replace the role of government. And I think what we should have is a discussion in this country about the role of the private sector, the role of government, and the role of civil society, and make sure we redefine. I think borders have got blurred over the last 30 years, and we're not clear about our different objectives. What we have to, so when government talks about job creation, I always say to them, stop. It's not your job. Your job, when you create jobs, it's a liability for the rest of society because we're funded through taxes. In fact, you should enable business to create jobs and business to do things, and compete and then pay profit, generate profits, which pay taxes to you, which allows to allow government to do the basics, which is safety, which is dealing with vulnerable citizens, supporting them, etc. So we've got to be clear about the roles, and then we'll do a lot better than we currently do.
But I mean, then the obvious question is, do we have the leadership to do that? Like, do we have the leadership in government? What do we need to do about the leadership?
Well, I don't think anyone in the room or anyone in the country, and there I'm at Idem maybe with the EFF for once, anyone actually believes that this country has been brilliantly led over the last few years, I think. But we have a leadership, and we have to work with them, and we have to let the people of South Africa. We are a democracy. We can you can express ourselves at the polls. We'll then get the leadership we have voted for, therefore the leadership we deserve, and we have to work with them and encourage them. But I do not think our country has been decisive. The current administration has been decisive enough, has been quick enough at dealing with the key issues. As the mayor of Cape Town, again, if you had him, I asked him what his priorities were, what the priorities should be for the country. And he said, we should only have one priority. And everything we should do, or we do, should be focused on achieving that priority. And that is the ANC's election slogan, a better life for all. It is jobs, it is safety, and actually an economic future. Now, if we could get that clarity of vision across government and broad society, Adrian Gore is absolutely right. This country could become a winning country because it's not difficult to turn around. We self-flagellate ourselves to such a point. We self-harm ourselves to the point where if we just stop doing that, the economy is going to grow at 3%. And then, if we put do a few ambitious things like sort the energy and the transport infrastructure out and tell the world we're open for business. Not just tell the world, actually open for business, relax the visa regime, open our education facilities to bright people from the continent, let local interests take care of themselves. In other words, devolve decisions as opposed to centralize them. You know what? This economy will be at 4 or 5% before we've opened our eyes, and then the benefit of a better education system will come through, which will drive it into the modern era. Why? Because we've got no legacy. We've got nothing to lose. We can do things so much better than economies which are far more advanced than us, which are locked into their now and increasingly antiquated systems. So the potential is vast. And every time I come to South Africa, I just see it. But we have created a multi-decade deficit in infrastructure investment, in development of human capital, and in creating a common vision. We kept on looking back. We kept on saying what was wrong in the past, and we came saying, well, because of that, we are going to fix this. And we don't realize that every morning my mother brought me up. I was brought up on the Japanese. I'm glad to see the Nikkei has now finally got back to where it was in 1989. So my mother was a school teacher. She went to Japan in 1970 with her best mate. They traveled after. My dad said, gift for you. I think they had their silver wedding or something. She and her best mate could go to Japan. And my dad and I stayed at home. It was fun. I did no homework. I ate ice cream every night. It was wonderful. And I was 9 years old. When my mom came back, she said, look, you got to understand. The Japanese get up early in the morning. They work. They're going to get very rich. They're going to take your job. Now, I brought my kids up on the Chinese. The Americans have changed things a bit, but the Indians are coming. In Asia, east of here, every morning, a few billion people wake up with a spring in their step, with a desire to be better, not complaining about a past system, not moaning about colonialism, not moaning about all sorts of Western woke things, just getting there to build a better life for their families. If we get that vision back into South Africa, and every guy in the township knows this is what he's about, this country is going to exceed Adrian's expectations. So I think that's the role we have to play.
Yeah. I mean, Hendrik, we can talk about South Africa for a long time. There's a lot else to cover. There is also one really interesting piece which you've taken a particular interest to, which we have to mention. It's been well covered in the Daily Maverick, and it talks about the rule of law in South Africa. But it's a really important case in trying to understand whether the rule of law and the potential is really uncovered. And it's a case that, I mean, it really has been extensive in Daily Maverick, but a lot of people are not aware of it. It's a case of Fred Daniel, who's suing the government, 24 people within the government and institutions, for over R1 billion. It's a case around ecotourism. It's a case against the Mpumalanga National Parks. And we've got a video with Fred, an interview for about 25 or 30 minutes, which we'll share with you after this session. You'll have full access to it on our website. We've got a minute snippet of that. But it's really important because we don't look at this world and South Africa through a blinkered view in thinking everything's rosy. You've got to look at everything. Hendrik, maybe just a quick view on why this is of interest to you. We'll play the video and then we'll move on to the other parts of our conversation.
Property rights matter. We have a constitution. Today is a big day. Yesterday, Parliament voted to impeach 2 judges, including Judge John Slopey, who was at university with me at Cambridge. And it's the right thing to do. It took 16 years too long, or how many years too long, but it's done. We have a legal framework within which we as citizens can enforce our rights. Property rights are fundamental to a successful economy, to investor confidence. What Fred Daniel is doing is standing up and fighting for that against all odds. And I would like you, if you've seen the longer video, to see how you, in whatever context possible, can support the battle of this person, this brave man, for all our sake, make sure that property rights remain respected and that arms of government cannot ride roughshod over citizens' fundamental rights enshrined in our amazing constitution. So that's really the appeal. Just look at the case, involve yourself, think, and other cases like that that exist in and around your ecosystems, because we cannot blame the world just on a president or a government or someone else. If we're not willing to stand up as the community, we are going to get the South Africa we deserve, which is not the right one.
So let's play the video for a minute. It's a case that started in 2010.
Yeah.
Yeah, to have you know, and it's likely to come to a conclusion this year.
Yeah.
But let's do that. And Fred's actually joined us today.
Democracy lies the rule of law and clean governance, and without that, we're pretty much doomed in South Africa. And you know, the Constitution is a foundation that brings us all together. And my case is very, very important to show the world that as a businessman investing your heart and soul into South Africa, that if civil servants behave badly, that you can hold them accountable and you can be compensated for those losses, which and again will be applied back into the economy. So my case, what I call the case that matters, is certainly very, very important, because if I fail to get justice, if they put gearbox or sand in the gearbox of justice, or put obstacles in your way, there's no hope for any businessman to protect his interests. So I believe that from that perspective, and for private ownership of land, you know, land is a cornerstone of the Section 22 of the Constitution. So I believe that my case is very important, the outcome of it to be positive. Thankful for every investor in South Africa.
Sangeeth, allow me 1 minute. We should, as active citizens, understand we have a role, and there are opportunities like this to involve and help, because we have very clearly defined rights, and those rights will provide confidence to business investment, which will ultimately provide the jobs that we need. So I just wanted to make you aware. Please go and read the book Predator Politics, written about this, or watch the video, which is probably easier to digest.
Great. Thanks. We're going to change tack. We've got not a lot of time left. Global investment returns. Let's touch on that a bit. The next decade, everyone's talking about the next decade being different to the last decade. The view is that we're at a pivotal point. I mean, what is your view in terms of return expectations, in terms of investment markets, looking at the next 10 years versus what we've seen over the last 10 years?
Sangeeth, firstly, I can never time the decade when the change is, but Clyde could probably give more granular answers. But all I know is we went through a massive pivot with the rise of interest rates. I mean, you didn't live through it in South Africa. If you operated in the rest of the world, in the last 24 months, interest rates increased by 22 times in US dollars. Think of what it did. From people got used to the zero interest rate world. Capital markets priced accordingly. Banks lent accordingly. HSBC CEO yesterday said his results have peaked for now. Even though he declared record earnings, stock price fell 8% because the market's looking ahead. There is a pivotal change. We're back into normal capital markets with real interest rates, although we still have inflation. That still has to be absorbed. Lots of issues in the private markets where they've been overly geared or overly dependent on debt. Sangeeth started by mentioning debt, demography, and a few other factors. Debt is going to be a major factor coming. And so if the price of capital is increasing, businesses that can't sustain a high price or fair priced capital are going to struggle. Also, countries which are excessively indebted. We saw our budget yesterday. We saw how Enoch went to under the couch. He got some cash under the couch, 150 billion.
I'm not sure we're allowed to say that in South Africa.
But you can only do that once. Now your couch is empty. So US debt is becoming a major issue. Now at the moment they're able to attract capital from the rest of the world. At some point the world will switch off and say no more. So we are going into a world of distributed returns. We are living what we've seen in political terms, the multipolar world we're going to see in markets now, and therefore it's about diversification. It's about looking at unloved classes, but not giving up on the structural winners. And the structural winners are the kind of stocks Clyde will talk about. The structural winners will continue to win because they adapt very fast, but there are opportunities elsewhere which have been ignored because it was so easy. And right now we know the money on the sideline is still massive. It has to come for risk assets. Don't wait until the money has come before you expose yourself to risk assets, because then you'll have to expose yourself in a much more expensive way. But it is tricky, and we don't live. Most of you in the room, I don't want to judge your age. You're all younger than me, but I don't want to judge your age. But most of you have conducted your businesses in an era of falling interest rates. We are now in an era of rising or sideways moving interest rates with some cuts. And this cut that everyone's been predicting that hasn't happened is the cut, okay? But we are in a world where capital is being priced, and therefore you don't have a beta wave that just buy any old asset and it's going to go up. You have to be more discerning, which is also why I am getting optimistic about the potential for this much written off part of the investment management industry, the active industry.
I mean, touch on climate change for a second, Hendrik. I mean, you've been a big champion of that globally. You're part of one of the very few CEOs that champion this cause globally, and you've been the voice for South Africa globally around climate change. We've seen on the headlines that a few asset managers have diluted their commitment to net zero. I mean, what's really happening?
Let me just read two numbers. Sorry for having my iPad here, but yesterday, or earlier in the week, the burger in Cape Town had a chart. You can't see it, but it's like red. You can see the sun, and it's called Hitte Records, a spot wêreldwyd. So 40% in Perth last week. It was 43% in 43 degrees in Tet in Mozambique. That was on the week on Tuesday. 43% in Prieska, Oudtshoorn, Uppington, Beaufort West. That is not healthy. 40 used to be extreme, once a year. Now 40 is once a month. If we can't change our principles, the world has to apply its ingenuity and its capital to reorganize the economy so that we can operate in a sustainable world, so our children don't have to live in air-conditioned rooms in a desert, or, as Elon Musk suggests, go to Mars. I don't want my grandchildren in Mars. And it's within our grasp. There's a clear pathway. There are pathways for net zero. It's been worked up. It's been scientifically supported by the IEA. Why, when you get the first bump in the road and the first little bit of, pushback from financial markets or from politics, you change your principles? At 91, we're long-term business. We understand the two big trends. One is adaptation for climate resilience and fighting global warming. And the other one is the inevitable technology revolution, which is around us. We have to fit our business accordingly, and we are not going to be Luddites. And I think people who change their principles because of presidential candidates in the US, maybe there are some legal issues for them, because apparently the US guys could be, if they held more than a certain percentage of companies, could be liable under securities law relating to competition, and that's why they can't all advocate for climate. But besides that, I can't, the good ones are expressing their opinions very, very clearly, and we are not going to stop, because this big trend is important and is right. And if we don't fight it now, we will create massive cost to your portfolios in decades to come, and we're not willing to participate in that.
And I mean, in that light, you're seeing a lot of changes from an industry perspective, from an investment industry perspective. There was a really interesting PwC survey, I don't know if you guys saw it, but basically talking about 75% of global asset managers in discussion around consolidation. Their view was that probably 1 in 6 asset managers will not exist in the next 3 to 5 years. And generally, there's just been a negative narrative around active management. I mean, where's all this going to end?
Sangeeth, it's been a tough time for active management, particularly when 7 stocks dominate returns. Passive looks like, it looks genial, but actually it's concentration of risk in things you think you buy the S&P, 26% of that's a few tech stocks. So I think number one, people don't think clearly. I think active industry has a lot of lazy participants. We're not perfect. We often fail. but trying for that extra 1 or 2% a year and achieving it 51% of the time, or if you're lucky, 55% of the time, makes a massive difference to portfolios. Is also socially relevant because societies must allocate their capital intelligently and not on a backward-looking basis. Therefore, there's a social utility, and I think the opportunity will come back. It's not dead. It's still active. It's still 90% of industry revenues. The characteristics of investment management businesses are very attractive, except the bars are raiding. It's a maturing industry. You have to focus on being better the whole time, relentlessly better. Lots of firms will fall by the wayside. We think the odds are such that at a place like 91, if we continue to do what we do well, and we serve you well and the end client well, we will be rewarded. And it's really not, and we live in a world with, investable capital that keeps growing. We talk about 130 trillion at the moment, excluding bank assets. The part we compete for is a 20 trillion pool, dollars. That's enough. We don't need to look elsewhere. We just need to do our job better, because AI, technology, relentless competition will find us out and say, why do you do it? Can you not do it better? And if you can't do it better, I can go to someone else. But we're up for it. We're keen. And to quote Stephen Kosseff, and that's probably not the high literature, but this idea of merging and doing corporate actions to get away from a challenge is absolute nonsense. As Kosseff often said, if you mix shit and ice cream, you don't get ice cream. Okay? And you can merge as much as you want. The same problems exist in the businesses, you just have double trouble. So in our case, you've got to fix it, you've got to deliver for your client, and you've got to apply you've got to have to be so focused. And if you're defocused with all sorts of things, it doesn't mean you can't do a deal that makes sense for the business. But just to say 75% of managers are going to merge because they don't think they can compete, well, they might as well close. They'll waste less money. So we're not in that camp. We see a pretty bright future after a very challenging time. And the time was challenging because of this massive repricing of capital and the fact that in our market, and you know your clients, they all say, oh, I'm getting money on interest rates now. I'm getting positive, although it's real negative, I'm getting positive interest rates. I'll stay in cash. And you saw the chart Sangeeth put up with that cash line right at the bottom over the 20 years. That's what we need to deal with. And right now, we've had a bit of an investor strike because they were comfortable in just buying bonds and sitting in cash. And in the institutional world, which most of you are not exposed, they have so much problems in their excessive exposure to private markets, which were all great when it was running on leverage, that they spend all their time in unwinding difficult deals in that they haven't really had time to apply themselves to the very significant public market opportunities that have presented themselves and are continuing to present themselves. So our job is to go and get that, deliver it to you, execute at a high standard, and by the way, do what we enjoy. We like investing. We're not going to go into ice cream manufacturing.
Hendrik, 91. I mean, we've got probably a minute or two.
Over time.
I mean, when you envisioned the business, you knew that we needed to be a market leader in South Africa, in our domestic market, and that we needed to be relevant as a global firm. We now have 50% of our assets that we manage global, 50% emerging market, 2/3 come from outside of African clients. I mean, what's next?
Sangeeth, you should tell me, because you're the future. But for us, there's a fantastic opportunity in this depressed industry, in these challenging times. If you remain focused, if you go after your markets, and we are exposed to very big markets. We are known in those markets. We've done the hard work. We have a good position in South Africa, which we're not going to give up. We are going to protect it and grow it. But in the rest of the world, where, just an example, North America is half the world's money. We've got 50 people there engaging with asset owners. We know they're going to put more of their assets internationally. That's a massive growth opportunity. The evolution of infrastructure, finance, credit markets. We're going to play a role in emerging markets, which is differentiated and different based on our history and experience, which will allow us to help build the global economy of the future and get our fair share for our people and our shareholders. And I've seen, we just see large opportunities. All we have to do to access them, once we get through this tough patch, is execute at a standard which puts us, and we go at 91, we want to be top 5 in what we do in the world, not in size, in quality. And that takes a lot of commitment. And probably if you sit here in 10 years' time and I'm on my Karoo farm, you will say, we have to get better. And if we just keep saying that and actually doing it, we have a good chance to participate because of the support this people in this room have given us over the last 30 years to build a business which can compete. So I think it's all about going to compete and accessing those opportunities and staying laser focused on the task at hand and not getting diverted by nonsense.
Thanks, Hendrik. As the host, I'm going to ask you one last question because I can. You spend a lot of time in the US, a lot of time in the UK, I mean, all over the world, really. I mean, what keeps bringing you back to South Africa?
It's the nicest, it's the best country in the world. I mean, nice people, just being here feels different. It's home. It's home. And so we had this discussion the other day, 2 years ago. I said, we've got to fix our house in Cape Town. And my wife said, well, it's risky. No one's building. And she's a risk manager type. And oh, must we do it? And you know what? It's where we want to be, and it's where our kids want to be, and it's just a phenomenal place. It's just, if we just run this place well, the rest of the world will flock here. But you can't explain it, and it's not just the weather, but the weather is very good.
Thank you, Hendrik. A round of applause for Hendrik, Adrian Gore, and Fred Daniel.